Hi, so I am restarting this channel for a second time. I have created videos in the past that I later deleted because I felt that some of the things I was saying wasn't sure if they were fully aligned with who I am. But if I'm honest, I think it was really just about maybe feeling too vulnerable talking about certain things. And as someone who is planning to come out more as a coach and supporter for other people, I just felt maybe it wasn't too professional. And now I'm reconsidering that again. Now I'm in my bathtub and I just want to be vulnerable. So, yeah, so welcome to my channel. And I'll start off by recapping just some of the things that I have said in prior videos, and I think it'll maybe be a bit cleaner this time because maybe I have more insight, hopefully. So yeah, so I am coming to grips with the fact that I'm neurodivergent, and I have been fighting this and on the fence about it for a while. And I've had good reason to. I was diagnosed with Asperger's when I was 11. I didn't like the way I was diagnosed because I wasn't really talked too much in the diagnosing process. So that's always been something that frustrated me about it. And I felt like there were some things that weren't taken into account in that assessment. So I really kind of rebelled against it. And the person who was my caregiver at the time was not, I think, understanding of that insecurity, and seemed to have made it known to a lot of people without me telling them what my diagnosis was. So really I just wanted my own independence, and I wanted the self-respect to define myself on my own terms. And I felt like it didn't completely explain me either. Now, when I turned 18, I got a reassessment and was told I didn't have Asperger's or autism. I wasn't given a new diagnosis, it was just left at that. And this was partly, if I recall correctly, it was partly an assessment for state benefits too. So now that I look back on it, I think there may have even been a I guess bias is the right word to say this. Maybe it's too strong of a word, but bias towards not diagnosing me with something that could be benefited by SSI. So yeah, I wasn't given a diagnosis at that time, and it was a few years that had passed by before I started seeing a therapist on my own as an adult. And I think by this time I was still pretty untrustworthy of the psychiatric system, and so I didn't necessarily seek out a hard diagnosis. It was more wanting, I think, just validation and understanding for my trauma. Um, was given a diagnosis of PTSD, and then really only towards the end of last year, like the last couple months ago, I was diagnosed with OCD, which made a lot of sense for me and really put the puzzle pieces together. But I struggled because I didn't know if my symptoms were a cause of a combination of CPTSD and OCD, which both did explain a lot, or if it really was some form of neurodivergence. Supposedly, when I was really young, like before 6, I was diagnosed with ADHD also. But that never came up again. It was just kind of left in the past, and just nothing more was said about it. So it's kind of like the diagnosis fell off on its own. So I've been really questioning that, and I've taken some online tests, quite a few of them. I tend to not score super high on the autism scale, but I tend to score above average on the ADHD scale. It does seem pretty high. I've talked with my therapist about it, and he's given me feedback he doesn't think I have autism just because of my presentation in therapy. I've gotten that feedback from other people too. And what really has thrown me off this whole time is that I feel like I'm two different people, and I have gotten that validation from other people as well. I know we all have different sides to ourselves. That's pretty normal, but for me, it's really extreme. For me, I have two seemingly polar opposites. Like I have a side that people do interpret as autistic, and some people have even told me that directly. And then I have another side that just seems normal, and then it feels like when I switch between different sides, it can be disorienting for the people if they're not used to seeing that. And I've even been told, I've been told by one of my former supervisors that I was like two different people. And I've been told by a facilitator on a retreat when I left and came back, he was more autistic, just had more of those symptoms. He seemed really shocked and seemed like something had gone wrong with the retreat, because I was really different on it. And once when I was with a partner, as I got more comfortable with him and I started breaking out of my shell more, I feel like I got some pretty clear feedback from friends that I was like a different person. So it's happened a lot in my life that it's like I'm these two different people, like one side of me that seems to be autistic and another side of me that seems to not be. And it's been really strange trying to make sense of that. And I know some people will say that that's just the result of masking, but for me it's not masking. What happens sometimes actually is that when my symptoms become more obvious, it usually is triggered by some kind of trauma response or stress response. So I know that plays a factor, and in some cases it even feels like my symptoms exaggerate as a sort of mask. In some cases, a sort of defense mechanism to make people feel sorry for me. It's not like I'm consciously thinking of this as I'm doing it, it's just so automatic and ingrained. And it's something I've been learning more about myself recently. But there's a defense mechanism built into this too, where in some cases I'll exaggerate my symptoms to play to my advantage, to make people take pity on me or give me more attention, or to just try to preemptively avoid harsh criticism, I think, sometimes. And like I said, a lot of this is subconscious. It's not like something that I'm willfully doing. And oftentimes it causes a lot of frustration in me because I don't like doing that. I don't like being that way, and I know it changes the way I'm perceived. And I feel like it sometimes loses respect, or it leads to condescending behavior from other people, even if they don't necessarily mean it. So it's been a real struggle. Sorry if this phone is shaky. I'm just trying to get comfortable. Yeah. It feels like in some ways my symptoms have been getting progressively worse over the past couple years. Like I have more body tics. I have a harder time forming words sometimes. I feel more fatigue and exhaustion. And I can get really, really stuck in mental loops. But sometimes I can get out of that, and I know a factor involved in that too is beliefs and the way I see myself. Because once I start believing that when I'm in this exacerbated state, that that's the real me, it's like it feeds into itself and it perpetuates it. But when I recognize that that's only part of me, it's not the whole me, then it seems like it's easier to navigate out of it. And that was a big reason why I had initially started this channel, because sometimes I feel like it's nice to just see me on video, because sometimes it's like I can catch myself, and I can kind of learn more about myself just by doing these videos. And then sometimes it feels like at a certain moment I get into sort of a flow state where I feel like I can be more of my unfiltered, authentic self. So I was really trying to take advantage of that. Yeah. It felt like it was nice as a reminder to myself that there is more to me. But I think there was still some struggle there, because I was questioning and in a way fighting this idea that I'm neurodivergent, because there is a part of me that really didn't want it to be true. It wanted to chalk it up to just PTSD and OCD, and social anxiety, because then it's fixable, because there's a way to heal from all those things. But if it's not, and it's something else, if it's more hardwired in, if it's more neurological, then there's not really a fix for it. There are ways to manage it. And as I'm learning more about, there are ways to potentially minimize it too. And I think it's totally valid too. Like psychedelics. And that's been my experience. My lived experience has been that psychedelics have helped me a lot to minimize these symptoms. And honestly, to just feel more like myself. I'm learning that there are some supplements like omega-3s that might also help with that. And I know there are more and more people in the neurodivergent community, particularly the autistic community, that are advocating for just total acceptance of autism, to not see it as any kind of disease or disorder, but just purely as a neurological difference, in that it's society's job to adapt itself around people like us, and that people like us can't change. We can only just accept ourselves. And I get some of the reasoning behind that, especially because there is a lot of stigma around it, and just the fact that I've been fighting this for so long, partly due to my experiences with the clinical system, but partly also due to the stigma around it, that I didn't want to accept that this was me. There's a lot of stigma that is still there that we need to work on as a society. So they're absolutely right that we need more acceptance. What I think they get wrong is an absolutist approach to it, that there's only acceptance and there's nothing you can do to change your condition. From a lot of anecdotal reports that I've seen of people who have done different experiments, and from some of the just prospective data out there on preclinical trials with things like MDMA, it does seem like it's possible to make some real significant changes. Doesn't mean it's a cure. And coming from a place of trying to fix ourselves or eliminate this maybe isn't really helpful and does just create more shame. But there are real things that we can do, and I don't think those should be overlooked either, because at least from my experience, because I'm owning the fact that I am neurodivergent, there are a lot of difficulties that come with it. There's tunnel vision and getting stuck in mental loops that are really hard to get out of. For me, there are a lot of body tics and twitching that are really uncomfortable and seem to be getting worse. I don't like living like that. There's a hypersensitivity that has some strengths about it, like a perceptiveness to it, but it can be very taxing too. And then some of the social difficulties as well that come with this. So I don't agree with the approach that we shouldn't be looking for any kind of solutions to minimizing the symptoms. I think that's too extreme. I think we can have a balance. And that's my take on it for myself. So To be honest, I still feel weird calling myself neurodivergent, not just because of the shame around it, but also because I don't have an official diagnosis yet. And that's been part of my problem too. A few years ago, I did try to get one, and I got like a brief assessment for ADHD and autism, and both of them said that I was borderline, so they weren't conclusive. And then, like I said, I've done a lot of online assessments that are more conclusive towards ADHD, but are very inconclusive about autism. Actually, I don't really, on most of these assessments, I don't meet the range for autistic. So that's left a lot of confusion. And like I said, the fact that I do go between different states, that I don't feel like I'm just one person all the time, I feel like I'm two different people, also adds to the confusion. Because I question, well, what's the real me? Is the me who hyper-focuses and stumbles over his words and is awkward and gets mentally stuck and tics a lot and is hyper self-conscious? Is that the real me that I just need to accept? Or is this other me that feels more gregarious and open and fluid and spontaneous and more relaxed and more able to think clearly? Is that the real me? And of course, when one version of myself feels a lot better than the other, there's a natural drive to want to be more in that state. And that's driven me to, I think, even seek spiritual states, because it's not just psychedelics, it's deep meditation or spiritual practices that sometimes can elicit that state for me. And when I've heard some reports of people who say that they were autistic and then they found a spiritual practice that diminished their symptoms, or that psychedelics for them diminished their symptoms, it just to me it just kind of reaffirms some of my own lived experience. And of course, we need more research on all this stuff, but there's not good research out right now. Not a lot. There's still a lot of stigma around psychedelics that is, I think, really unwarranted. And there is, doesn't seem to be a lot of research around meditation and spiritual practices for autism or ADHD. So, although there is some good research on yoga and meditation for changing the brain, and it's going to take a while for more of that research to come out. Even more time for any conclusive results to come out of that would inform clinical practice. I think we're going to have to wait at least 10 years for that, if not more. And you know what? A lot of us we shouldn't have to wait. I am a full fan of, I'll just say, systematic and mindful self-experimentation. And I think there's a lot of value to anecdotal evidence when it's within a community, and you can sort of support each other, and you can share each other's results, give feedback, and find your own treatment. And I work in the peer support field currently, which is people with mental health experiences supporting others with mental health conditions through their personal experience. And within the peer community, there's a lot of value seen in just having gone through it and having found your own way to find well-being. That it's not just dictated by a clinical worldview or the mainstream worldview. And I think our mainstream clinical worldview has a lot of issues right now. And it's going to take a lot of time for those to be corrected. So, not just people who are neurodivergent, but I think all of us who have mental health conditions and just psychological challenges, I think we all owe it to ourselves to do our own research and to find what works for us personally. And of course, this is not medical advice, and it's a good idea to collaborate with our providers, to also find the provider who works for us, who's open-minded and maybe even holistic, or has a broader scope of awareness than most traditional psychiatrists or clinicians. But yeah, I think it's a good idea to collaborate, and we are the ones who get to decide ultimately what we choose to do. So yeah, it's a lot of heavy weight, I think, for a lot of people. I just felt the need to say it. I've always been kind of brash about what I want for myself, and I just wouldn't tolerate someone who would try to push me around with that. I would just tell them to fuck off and go find someone else. But I understand that for some people it's a lot harder to do that. Okay, so yeah, I don't have an official diagnosis of autism or ADHD currently. I am in process of getting that checked out, but we'll see. But part of my process too has been also realizing that the current criteria we have for autism, I don't think it really fits the bill for everyone. And I think it's actually kind of limiting to see neurodivergence as just a few of these conditions. I think there's a lot more variation. I think it's also misleading to talk about an autism spectrum, because really what it does is it lumps a certain cluster of symptoms all together under one spectrum, when in reality I think it's more useful to have spectra, multiple spectrums of traits that different people can fall on. For example, I'm really good at reading facial cues. And a lot of my awkwardness comes more from social anxiety than from not being able to attune to other people. And as far as the DSM diagnosis goes, that's like one of the major criteria for autism, those social difficulties. Presuming that they're not rooted in anxiety. And it just doesn't fit the bill for me. That was one of the major reasons why I really questioned whether I have autism or not, and thinking that I don't. But I don't think it's that simple. I think it's a lot more complex than that. I do know that my social abilities did have to develop over time, and they did develop authentically, not just as a form of masking. I think psychedelics and MDMA helped with that to an extent, with seeing some of my blind spots. Because because I did have some social blind spots. But even then, I was still able to like reflect. Because I was good at reading social cues, mostly reading nonverbal cues. If I did something that was off or like a faux pas, I would generally be able to read the person's reaction and then understand, oh, I probably shouldn't do that. And a lot of it was kind of silly things, like not something I would have to mask to not do, just things like I would just like understand something at that point, like, okay, I can see where this person's coming from. I probably shouldn't do that. So it felt more like a natural thing. But I do also think that psychedelics helped accelerate seeing my blind spots. And I was able to like look back on different situations and put even more of the puzzle pieces together and understand myself better too. And I think it amplified that ability so much that I think I'm actually more advanced than the average person, even than the average neurotypical person at reading some of those cues. Plus, I have been trained as a hypnotherapist. I've taken some more advanced trainings on even conversational hypnosis that really require a high level of attuning to people and reading body language. So I feel confident that I'm pretty advanced with that, even more than most neurotypical people. So it's not a deficit for me with that. And I'd be very curious to see if I could help other neurodivergent people increase those skills. And I think a combination of training, I'm just thinking the kind of training that I've had as a conversational hypnotist, and as a peer support specialist. I'm thinking a combination of like skill development and use of psychedelics could help a lot of neurodivergent people. I don't think that's a skill deficit that has to be there forever. And I think everyone's different, so it's not possible to know for sure how someone's going to develop. But we really need to get rid of this myth that is well-meaning, but just not true. We need to get rid of this myth that all you can do is accept your symptoms, that you can't actually improve them, and trying to improve them is just a form of masking. It's just not true. Not for everyone, and I think it's worth exploring that more. So, with all that being said, though, there are some symptoms that are pretty clear for me, that I think place me pretty squarely in the neurodivergent range. And as I've mentioned them before, one of them is getting very hyper-focused on things, or getting mentally stuck and having a hard time unsticking myself. And I've studied self-development for most of my life. I've studied psychology, I've studied different spiritual practices, I've studied a lot of different things around self-improvement. And so I've carried a lot of shame over the years because I always felt like I would try so hard to change or to be a certain way, and namely with these symptoms that I'm listing now. But I'd only see like minimal progress, or see progress under certain conditions, but not something that would just like become my new baseline. It would be something I'd have to like work hard to get to again. Or alternatively, I'd have to be doing all the right things every day, all the time. Like sleeping really well each night, eating really well, exercising every single day, meditating every single day, positive self-talk, like all of these things every single day. And even though I would feel a lot better, there would be sometimes like an exhaustion to it too. There would be some kind of something that just felt unsustainable about it. And if even one thing fell out of place or something went wrong in my life, then it would all fall apart. So it was like, I mean, it worked when it worked, but it was very fragile. And then when it would all fall apart, usually I would just have kind of I guess a meltdown or a burnout, really. I would just feel depressed. And then it would take me months to get back to that place again. So, and that was just this constant cycle I would go through my entire life. So, that became a challenge. And I suppose there were times in my life when I was kind of oblivious to being neurodivergent. I knew I was different, but I think a lot of time I just chalked it up to trauma or just life experiences I'd had, or sometimes just like being intuitive, or like an empath. Like I would just chalk it up to those things, or I would chalk it up to just people not understanding me. But there were times in my life when I wouldn't even really think about that, and I would just go through my life. Usually it was when I was in an environment where I was being taken care of. And I think I just didn't have to worry about having extra responsibility on my shoulders to like do really well or perform really well. I could just kind of be myself. And I think the interesting thing there is that looking back, I can definitely see the signs of neurodivergence, but at the same time, I think there was also less self-consciousness, and as a result, more flow, more outgoingness, social fluidity, more being myself, maybe more confidence, just more oomph, more just, it just seemed in some ways my life was better. So it's interesting now for me to think about that, because I guess that's what I've been trying to get back to. But it feels a lot harder when I feel like I have to take care of myself, when there is that extra responsibility for me to do well. Otherwise, I lose my apartment, or I can't pay for food, or, you know, or lose my job, or, excuse me, or whatever. So I think just that pressure on its own creates this background level of stress that never really goes away. Or goes away very briefly. So, yeah, I'm just trying to understand myself better. It does feel good to accept that I'm neurodivergent. And I think there are multiple subtypes. I don't fit the classic autism box, but I think I'm definitely a subtype. And I think we'll learn a lot more about this as the years go on, but it's going to take a while for us to learn more. I think we really poorly understand neurodivergence today. I think it's very just not it's not a sophisticated level of understanding. So I'm just going to accept that, and it may be with some more self-advocacy I can push for an official diagnosis, but it's also equally likely that they still won't fully consider me to fit the diagnosis, and that I might maybe could get under the ADHD umbrella, but yeah, we'll just have to see. But it puts things a lot more into perspective, I think. And even last year, when I was thinking that OCD puts so many things into perspective. Like it just fits. It makes sense of things, and it still does. But now I'm saying that there's likely a connection between my neurodivergence and OCD, because my OCD isn't just how do I say this? My OCD is my OCD. It's the stress related thoughts, intrusive thoughts. But my brain does a lot more than that. My brain latches onto a lot of things that have nothing to do with distress, and it just really fixates on them. It fixates on special interests, and it even sometimes fixates on really kind of bizarre, spontaneous things, or things that other people would find silly, that even I find silly, but it just does that. So I think it's the broader picture behind the OCD. And then I feel there's this rigidity sometimes too. Just feels like a rigidity on all levels, because it's like physical. It's like it carries this physical tension with it in my whole body. Even sometimes it feels like it makes it kind of hard to speak physically. And then it's like an emotional rigidity, like having a really, really hard time letting go of certain emotions. Even when I've learned a bunch of skills for holding space for myself, working with different parts of myself, it's just like really, really hard to let go of emotions sometimes. And it's really hard for me to let go of my past. And I've tried a lot, but it's really hard to do that for me. And then of course the mental rigidity, like I was just talking about. So it's just this multi-level rigidity that makes life very uncomfortable. And with meditation, sometimes I can loosen that up, but it's not easy. So I see kind of this three-pronged approach for myself with this that I think I'm just gonna embark on. The first prong is self-acceptance, which I'm doing now. just embracing the fact that I'm neurodivergent. I might not fit all of what people expect that to look like, but I still am. So just accepting that about myself and understanding that that's my reality, and all this self-help work I've done on myself has probably been harder because I'm neurodivergent, and in some cases was trying to fix things that maybe weren't meant to be fixed. And I think sometimes self-help has to be tailored for a neurodivergent brain, because some approaches that might work really well for a neurotypical person could be a real struggle for someone who's neurodivergent. So I think that can help me let go of some of the shame around, oh, but I've studied all this and I've tried really hard and practiced a lot, but I'm still the same. I must be a failure, or I must be an imposter. I think I can start to let that go more. And I know that I am a really good hypnotist and coach. I've helped people solve some pretty deep, important issues in just one session that I know for a fact they wouldn't be able to resolve with a therapist for months, if not potentially a year or more. I've gotten really good feedback on that. So I know I have the skills. And I think it's in part because I have some of those skills that I've been able to navigate this as much as I have, because it has been extremely difficult. And I feel like because I don't quite fit the box I don't fully fit the box of neurotypical, and I don't fully fit the box of neurodivergent as it's currently understood today. It's just made it that much harder for me to accept myself, I think. And it's just maybe created more inner conflict than there needed to be. But despite all that, I think I've navigated it better than someone would without the skills and knowledge that I have. Because there have been many times that I have come, that I've gone pretty deep into thoughts of wanting to die. There have been times where my tics would be so bad, I would just be like twitching out just intensely, feeling like a freak. And feeling like I don't know who the fuck I am. Because if I'm not this way all the time, it's just in a way it kind of makes it feel worse. I mean, this is just the way that my brain took it, but it's almost like when you know what it's like to not have to deal with all that, and especially when you get the positive feedback and the respect of when you're not in that state, and then you're really fully in that state, and it's obvious that you are by anyone who meets you. It's just it's extremely humbling, and it's kind of devastating. It just really fucks with your mind. So there have been a lot of times that I've wanted to die. But yeah, so that's the first prong, self-acceptance. And then for me, the second prong is finding my own biological treatment for it, which may include medication, but I want to try. I think I really want to try incorporating psychedelics more, and there are some legal ways to do that out there, like Joyous and Mind Bloom can give you a prescription for ketamine if you fit the bill. And yeah, I mean, I live in Oregon now, where psilocybin recently became legal for facilitation purposes. So that's an option. So I have some legal options available, but I think unto each their own, and it's not up to me to tell people how to live their lives. But yeah, I think there's a huge amount of promise in using psychedelics for this. And I would like to try a more structured, consistent approach with them, because I've done different types of psychedelics at different times, really spread apart. And the usual advice for this is that typically the advice is given like, you take it once, you take time to integrate it, you wait a while, perhaps several months, and then you take it again if you need it. And I just think that's a neurotypical approach, but I don't think it's. I want to do things differently for myself. Yeah, I would like to do more frequent macro doses. I'm not sure how frequent yet. More frequent macro doses combined with microdosing in between. And then maybe gradually tapering that off. And yeah, who knows, maybe not even tapering it off completely, but leveling it out. Because I'm also considering maybe accepting this idea that maybe it's okay to have something that helps me long term. Because in the past, I've been afraid of being dependent on something like medication or even psychedelics. I've kind of always gone into a psychedelic experience wanting it to be my last experience, wanting to get everything I need from it and for it to have a lasting change. Because I didn't even want it to be dependent on that, even as a once in a while kind of thing. But now I think I'm having more of maybe a balanced approach to it, and just considering, well, if my brain really is different and this is something that I know helps me and potentially helps me better than any medication could that a psychiatrist would give me, then maybe I just need to give myself permission to use it in the way that works for me. And maybe that means a lifelong partnership with the medicine. It doesn't have to be microdosing it every day. And it does seem, there is evidence that psychedelics do cause real changes in the brain, and I think that's even true for neurodivergent people. But yeah, maybe that's just something that I give myself permission to do, to not feel like I have to make every experience my last. It's just part of my medicine. And then part of that approach too isn't just psychedelics, but I think also supplementation. I've done some research on that too, and I'm very curious about trying some different things. Seems like NAC and omega-3 fish oils, possibly even vitamin D, can help a lot with these types of symptoms. So I would like to give those a try. Just give it an honest shot. Yeah, so. And then there's the Walsh protocol, which is a much more sophisticated version of that. They do some pretty extensive lab testing to gauge where you are nutritionally, and it's kind of like an assessment too, in a way, not officially, but it's like their own type of assessment where they can usually draw correlations, I believe, with some certain diagnoses, including autism, and they can recommend a supplement-based treatment protocol that uses therapeutic levels of supplements to help rebalance the body. So they seem to have a lot of good evidence behind them, and I hope it becomes more well known and more researched, and that it gets into the hands of more people. So yeah, I think for me, those would be some pretty critical things: psychedelics and supplementation. So I want to try that too. And then the third thing is just practicing, just practices that I know that help me. So that includes self-care practices, like taking time for myself when I need it, when I'm feeling overloaded. It includes maybe thinking ahead too sometimes to help prevent being overloaded. And it also includes things like meditation and mindfulness. Things like acceptance and commitment therapy, and yeah, just practices that I know help me to navigate this better. I think overall, good quality sleep, exercise, and mindfulness tend to help me the most. So I think it's really helpful for me to commit to those more. So yeah, those are the 3 prongs I am identifying for myself: acceptance, biological support, and practices. And I think it's I think they all go together. I don't think one is mutually exclusive from the other. I think they all can complement each other. So to conclude this, I'm always going to be different in some way, and maybe that's okay. I think I still have some work to do to fully accept that, but I think I'm taking a good step in the right direction. It doesn't have to happen all at once. I know, just based on my own experience, that I can reduce my symptoms and I can better manage them. So that's that. I think today, in the past few days, I've been in a very autistic mode, and I've been very hyper fixated on things, and hyper self-conscious. So that's just where I'm at right now. And I know that I'm also not always in that. I know that I have more flexibility too. So I'm giving myself permission to post this video, accepting that I am multifaceted, and that's okay too. All right, well, thank you so much for listening to this. I know it's kind of unconventional to be doing this in a bathtub, but I don't know, I feel more relaxed in here, and I feel like it kind of is a nice symbolism of being vulnerable. So I'm just gonna run with it. I kind of like this theme. All right, take care.